Asia Tech Podcast with Graham Brown and Michael Waite.
This is Asia Tech Podcast. Asia Tech Podcast Stories. We are all about the stories that make the Asian tech ecosystem so fascinating, so exciting, so inspiring. And today with me, Honey Kathuria. She is joining us all the way from Mumbai in India. We're going to talk about your journey, Honey, as well as your project. You're founder of Cowork.
That's
talk
right.
about that. And I mean, it's just a fascinating area to be in that I've got so many questions to ask about that and how you ended up there. But Mumbai first, I mean, I know you're from Delhi, right? And just for those listeners, can you explain, like in a very short sentence, the difference between Delhi and Mumbai?
That's an interesting question. I think these two cities, like metro cities in India, people would think that they are very similar, but they are totally apart. Like leave about the weather, which is entirely different. Right. Mumbai has a very mild weather. Delhi has extreme summer, extreme winter. It's the culture. You know, Delhi is driven by chaos, but it's chaotic chaos. And Mumbai is organized chaos, if that makes any sense.
It's kind of making sense.
But that's what my experience is, you know. It's like there is a rhythm in Bombay. Things happen for a reason, and, you know, you can usually predict why things are going, or the way things are going to happen. Delhi, on the other hand, is like totally unpredictable.
It's so interesting. I mean, I think the first time I came to Delhi, I can't remember what time of year it was, but I came to Delhi and I was cold. I came from London, and I traveled around Asia a bit, and I landed in Delhi. I thought, wow, it was nighttime, and we were out somewhere, and I thought, wow, it's really cold. I knew it's going to be up in the hills in the Himalayas. It's going to be cold, right? But in Delhi, wow. So I wasn't prepared for that shock. So I guess that kind of creates the mindset goes so much with the weather, doesn't it? So, you know, Delhi's much more Delhi's the traditional administrative capital of India, right? I mean, you know, all the embassies there, and so on. Mumbai's much more of a creative capital, right? You know, you've got
Mumbai is the home of Bollywood, and also the financial sector. So, like, a lot of banks, etc., are based out of Bombay. So that's what differentiates. Yeah, Delhi is more on the admin and the government side. Bombay is more on the creative and finance side.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And it has that, I mean, you know, both of them have I suppose a different scene for business as well, and tech. I mean, and then you just change state again, and you go to a place like Bangalore or Hyderabad, it has a tech scene and so on. But Mumbai, I think, is most famous. My experience, and I don't know how it is today for you, Honey, but traffic. I mean, wow. I've been to some crazy places, but what is going on in Mumbai and the traffic? That is insane.
You know, having lived in Atlanta for 5 years, where the traffic is crazy in US, it's, you know, the traffic in Mumbai and Delhi still beats me. It's like the distance between two places cannot be measured in miles or kilometers. You actually measure it by the average time it takes you to reach there.
So true.
Seriously, I have spent more than an hour to cover 2 miles. And that's true in Delhi as well as in Bombay.
Wow.
So it's the roads, the traffic. The one thing is there, which I have noticed, is that between Delhi and Bombay, the road rash, like, you know, the people become so angry. That's more in Delhi. In Bombay, people usually, like, you know, just keep on honking, which they do everywhere in India anyways. But they don't, like, start, you know, rolling down their windows and start shouting at the other person.
Right. That's so interesting.
That's a difference.
I remember in Bombay, I think there's a point where we were driving, we were stuck in traffic. There was an intersection where two roads are crossing each other, and that was just chaos because they weren't moving. But guys would get out of their cars, right? And they would physically stand in the middle of the road and stop the traffic. And I don't know if that's the sort of the way things are done there. So it was crazy. And then he would, you know, when all the traffic had come by, he would madly run back into his own car just so he could get into, you know, the last window of opening into the other side. It was just, wow. Love it.
You know, we don't hesitate in taking matters in our own hands. It works both ways. Sometimes it backfires, but I think in your experience, it actually helped.
Amazing. So you've traveled around quite a bit as well. You spent the time in the US, and you've spent a lot of time in Asia as well. So I want to talk a little bit about that, because, there's a nice sync as well with your professional experience, especially, working and founding Kowrk as well. How much important that is. So tell us a little bit about your travels first. Where have you lived in the world?
So I was born and brought up in Delhi. I did my studies in Pune, which is a city near Bombay. And then I moved to London. I was there for 2.5 years. Was working my office was next to St. Paul Cathedral. I loved that place. I thoroughly enjoyed my time in London. I was working as a consultant. And then I moved to US in between I went to Canada for almost an year in Toronto, which was great again, working as a consultant. Then moved to Atlanta, stayed there for 5 years. My husband did his PhD from Emory University in Atlanta, so that's why I was there for quite some time. Moved to Hong Kong, joined Expedia/Hotels.com as the offline manager for APAC operations. And then after 2 years, actually, I quit and founded Cowork.com. Then moved to India because I realized I can get more value for my Hong Kong and US dollars in India in terms of, resources and everything. So I set up the operation base in India, but we do have a marketing hand or person in Hong Kong as well. So right now I'm in Bombay mainly. Actually, I just got a baby boy 2.5 months ago.
Oh, congratulations.
So thank you. That just added the unpredictable twist in the whole thing. Yes. So now I've been in Bombay for that reason. I have been here for last almost an year. Otherwise, I was planning to shuffle. I was shuffling between Hong Kong and Mumbai a lot. But for past 9-10 months, it has kind of stopped. But it's going to kick off again in another 2-3 months.
What is, you are going to kick off? Or it's going to kick off means business? I mean, you're going to get up
travel.
and start. Right, okay.
Yeah, my travel is going to kick off again between Hong Kong and Bombay because these are the two markets that we are focusing a lot in Cowork. That's because our expertise lies in understanding the local market, and we can do like local marketing events, etc.
So I want to understand as well. I mean, what it's like to be a founder and a mom. Not just a mom, but a mom of a 2.5-month-old boy. That's no easy task. I mean, one of those alone is not easy, right? Put them together.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you about that. But just before we get there, honey, you traveled around so many amazing places. Was there sort of a master plan? Did you sort of just follow where the work or the opportunity was? Or did you sort of say, right, I want to go and see some of the world, and therefore I'm going to find, what came first? Was it the place to live or the work? What sort of was your driver in all of that?
I think, so my husband and we both were very driven with the fact that we wanted to live in different parts of the world till we get a family or, till we can't move, basically. So we always looked for opportunities which took us out of our place. So I'll be very frank with you. Till now, I haven't changed a house. I've actually just changed the country whenever it became time for me to move, except for Bombay. That's the place where I have got into a second home. Otherwise, every place I've stayed pretty much in the same house. So we have always thought that whenever we have to move, if we can, let's move to a new place or a new city or a new country. So, London happened by chance. My husband and I were both working in IT company. I was being sent to Australia. He was being sent to London just after marriage. And we're like, no, we want to be at the same place, not in two different continents.
Not two different continents, but opposite sides of the world, right?
Exactly. So we went to London by choice. And from that, when it came time to do PhD, US schools are better. And the kind of field my husband was looking at, the opportunities were better in US. So he decided for Emory University in Atlanta, moved there. I had a chance of either being in London or in Toronto for 1 year in between. So I chose Toronto because that was closer to Atlanta anyways. And then when it comes to moving again, we had an option of either actually going to Spain, staying in US, or moving to Hong Kong. We chose Hong Kong because this is totally crazy, entirely different thing. No, not even in my wildest dream, I had thought that I'll go and stay in Hong Kong just because, the culture, the language and everything. But when we got an opportunity, we kind of jumped on it, and then it was just great. So I would say that it was a desire to live at different cities, different places, experience different cultures that made us actually, and some luck basically, which helped us move across different countries.
It's fascinating and inspiring as well. I mean, Indians move around a lot, especially educated Indians. They're always in demand, especially in IT and professional services and so on. But did you ever find that there was a time when people sort of said, honey, okay, you've had your fun. It's time to put down some roots now. I mean, you've done your travel the world thing. It's time to sort of come back and work for a safe company, safe job, et cetera, et cetera. Did you experience that kind of pressure? Because, you are an entrepreneur now, also a mother of a very young boy. So, I imagine there was a lot of pressure there to sort of just kind of stable things out a little bit and stop traveling around.
Luckily, I'm one of the few ones I would say in India where the family wasn't like pressurizing us to settle down or to be at a place. They just there were some family incidents which happened, because of which I wanted to be closer to India. That was another reason why we moved to Hong Kong, that India is more easily accessible as compared to that from USA. So no, I didn't get into it. Like, we wanted to have a family. We started it when we could or whenever it happened. But luckily I could move, But now I can't move. I have realized that. Now it's a time when my roots are going to be established and, travel is going to be less and I'm going to have a base.
Yeah, but you just said that in a couple of months you're going to be off traveling again, so it's not like... I don't think they could ever cage you forever, can they?
Actually. Plus, it'll not be that crazy, Earlier I was spending like 2 weeks in Hong Kong, 2 weeks in Bombay. I cannot do that any longer. So, but, I'll figure out something. Okay. This is more of a field where you go by as you go ahead.
You're doing great. It's fantastic. I want to obviously talk about your entrepreneurial journey now. So let's talk about Kowrk. I mean, obviously there's a lot of history that you've had. You said you worked for Expedia, Hotels.com and so on. You've worked for a whole bunch of IT companies as well around the world. How did you get into that space? Kowrk, not the IT stuff. So.
Sure. So this is a very interesting story, actually. I just believe in, when things have to happen, they always happen. Other things just mold around it. So I always wanted to do something of my own, and I was exploring the idea, but nothing came. And, I kept on getting a better job or a better role in corporate world. So, the money was good. Everything was nice. So I just stayed there. But then when I was in Hong Kong, I became very interested in the startup scene there, because it's very, it's hot now, and it was again pretty hot 2 years back as well. So I was going for a lot of networking events, meeting a lot of people in Hong Kong, just, in my free time that I could gather. And then there was a friend of mine who wanted to set up her business in Hong Kong. So she came and she was looking for an office space. And I knew about co-working spaces because I had gone for networking events there. So I told her that, let's go, these are the few options that I know of. You can figure out any one of these places and take up an office space there. That lady made me go to actually more than 10 places to visit and say, okay, which one she's going to take up. And I was like, why are you doing this? You don't go to hotels before you book them. In the end, it's all about the amenities that are there, the kind of reviews these places have, the images, etc. Just look online and select and go to one or two at max. When we tried to do that, we realized it wasn't there was no platform like that at that time. So if you wanted to go, you actually go and visit or just pick up whichever place is closer to you. And that's the time when the idea of Cowork was born, that we want to create a platform where people can book, find, review, compare shared workspaces. We did a small survey with our friends, found out that yes, people were interested in this concept, but they had no knowledge about how to go about. They'll have to research, find different options through Google, and then they didn't trust the individual website. So they wanted they said that they would prefer an independent platform. So that's how Cowork started. When when I believed that the idea was strong enough, I quit my job. We started the product development, marketing, etc. And we kicked off in November 2015.
So you've been going for, between a year and a half and 2 years now, right?
Yeah, almost 2 years.
Yeah, fantastic. So how does Cowork make its money? What's the revenue stream for that business?
So currently we are charging we have two revenue stream. One is the listing fee where, the spaces that want to list on our platform and want to enjoy special benefits like leads, etc. They pay an annual fee. And the other is that we charge the co-working spaces for the converted leads that we have sent their way.
Right.
So it is a lot like, Airbnb, if I can say that. So those are the two ways. We do not charge our customers, and we don't charge spaces for non-converted leads.
Right. So you're building like what effectively is a platform, but it's like a two-sided business model, isn't it? You need the co-working spaces and you need the freelancers and the startup people to go and populate those co-working spaces. So how do you do that? I mean, how have you been building your business marketing-wise? Because those you mentioned Airbnb, but Airbnb's marketing budget is massive. You're talking hundreds of millions just to kind of build that market globally. How are you doing that? I mean, how's things going for you?
So, Graham, with us, our value proposition for co-working spaces has been very natural, or it's a very no-brainer, that we send you customers that you would probably not get other ways, and we'll take a cut, we'll take a commission on it. And we negotiate rates with co-working spaces. So because we are sending them something more that they wouldn't have got it, and at the same time, we're actually expanding the market that is out there. So just to give you an example, when I started Kowrk around 2 years back, the concept of co-working was hardly known in India. It was picking up it was strong in Hong Kong. It was maturing in US, but India was just actually there were hardly any spaces when we started. But over the years, we have helped some companies. There are chains of co-working spaces that have come in India, which created profitable models, etc. That the whole market itself has expanded. And we have been a player in creating the awareness and, generating the value benefit that co-working spaces or shared workspaces bring in for people. So hence, we have had a very smooth, or I would say very supportive ride with regards to our suppliers, which are the co-working spaces, business centers, etc. Just to give you an example, we didn't stick with the co-working spaces, the big names there. We go to the business centers like DBS, etc. And we go to co-working cafes. So there are cafes, which really don't have that much of a footfall during certain time of the day. And they also have people who just sit there with one coffee. So we are converting a lot of these places into what we call co-working cafes, where customers can go and buy a daily, weekly or monthly pass, and they get food and beverages, coupons, but the money they have spent in the ticket or in getting the pass there. And, it helps co-working, it helps the cafes because people were anyway sitting there. So we are bringing that concept a lot in India, and we are, creating the inventory for it. And the other one which we are doing, and this has been pretty successful in India, is shared workspace. So people who already have their offices but have spare desks or meeting rooms that they're not using on regular basis, they can rent it out through our platform. So, the whole concept has evolved from co-working to actually shared workspaces, right, where the co-working spaces, business centers, cafes, and private and the shared office are the different players. And because of our reach to different set of customers and the value proposition that we bring, we are able to connect the two parties together.
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, for those that really haven't got a good picture of the co-working space industry, the co-working industry, it's just exploded, especially in the last 5 years, and especially in countries like India as well, where even going back a few years, it really wasn't there, was it? I mean, there was a few you had the Reguses and those kind of people, but the actual co-working spaces designed for co-working have just really been a recent phenomenon. So I'm curious as well about what kind of co-working spaces are coming to you? Is it sort of the big WeWorks, or is it sort of the more local ones who don't have the sort of the marketing budgets of a WeWork? Who sort of naturally gravitates to you?
So we have had a mix of it. WeWork is not on our platform yet, but we have had other players like Hive, Springboard. There are a lot of local players in India, which are like the national players in India, like Innovate, Office, etc. They are on our platform, and we have international clients or chains as well. So it has been the small ones because they don't have marketing budget, or they can get help with more advertising through other channels, as well as the established players, because they know how this model works.
And how is that sort of market developing? Because we're seeing, just last week here in Singapore, you had WeWork acquire SpaceMob. So you merge, I suppose. You had that sort of acquisition. So you're seeing these very large players eating up these medium-level players, because there is an advantage to have all these the economies of scale and the marketing budget shared and so on. So you're seeing this real consolidation, and then you have this sort of very micro level co-working space as well. How do you see things going? Do you see co-working spaces becoming like cafe chains where you have like large mega players like the Starbucks, and then you have like maybe one or two small boutique local cafes? I mean, what do you think is going to happen?
I think that's a good analogy there, Graham, because this is what we will expect. See, WeWork as of now is well funded, right? What's happening on the books is still not out. So we know that the money is being burned, and we don't know how profitable things are. The marketing budgets are very high because investment has been there, right? So so they are going with the acquisition, as well as WeWork is famous for having the best of the best location, which costs money. Yeah. Now there is a demand from a customer point of view. There is a demand for such high-end, high-rated places where the small medium businesses, or rather the satellite offices of big brands are being opened. But there is also a demand for normal places like boutique places, which are not that expensive, which still provide all the facilities, at least the basic amenities, etc. So the boutique firms come into play. So what I'm trying to say here is that the consolidation is happening because that caters to one type of the demand that is coming. But then there are boutique, cheaper, nicer, not nicer, but cheaper, more economical, and more curated kind of places which exist because there is a demand for that.
Right.
I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
So in India, a seat at WeWork, a dedicated desk at WeWork will cost 18,000 rupees in India. And at another place, it will be as low as at 1/3 of that price. Now, there is a demand actually for both type of places.
That's very...
And as long as there's going to be demand, there is going to be supply. People will coming up. WeWork will grow the WeWork is growing the market. We know that HSBC in Hong Kong has put more than 300 employees at WeWork. So has done like so many other companies. But there are still small companies, startups, etc., which really do not want to spend that much money on office space. They're looking for an area where there is electricity, there's Wi-Fi, and free coffee. That's exactly what they want. They don't want a jazzy location or a seat that reclines 270 degree. So there is, because there is such a varied demand, there is going to be a varied supply as well.
Now, I want to ask you about, you mentioned something very interesting about HSBC in Hong Kong, also in the co-working space, because that's something I wanted to ask you about. So before I forget, I want to ask you about the future of co-working for corporates. But let's park that for a minute and come back to it, because I think you have a really interesting viewpoint on that with your background as well. Now, I want to know, you have worked with co-working spaces, you do lead generation effectively for these co-working spaces, and you see the kind of people coming in, you work with these co-working spaces as well, so you get an understanding of what they do right, what they do wrong, and you've seen them grow as well. Some, you've seen them start out and seen them blossom and so on. Is there sort of an area of co-working which has a demand which is unmet? You know, if you were to start a co-working space, you would do this because this is what people are asking for, but they can't supply it fast enough right now. Is there anything out there which you can sort of share with us? Or maybe you just want to tell us and keep it to yourself because you are going to start.
Yeah, so see, there are few segments where the demand hasn't been met, you know, or there is like unmet demand right now. Yeah, so in India, one sector where, a lot more can be done is for mompreneurs. You know, so there are women who are working part-time because they have left their corporate jobs. We all know how I personally now know how difficult it is to work when you have a child at home. It's, according to me, it's just like you simply just can't do justice to the work. You have to choose who you are at a given point of time. But in India, culturally, and you know, because of like some reason or the other, a lot of these kind of work is still being done from home, and I think that is actually what's causing or what's not letting that segment or those set of entrepreneurs grow. Because they're limiting themselves, they're limiting their productivity to a great extent by saying, okay, I can do this much in this much constraint or this much time. No, that's not right. Even if you go work 2 hours, but you work at 100% capacity, you can deliver much more than what you are currently being able to do. So that's one area, mompreneurs as we call them, I think is something, the idea or, the supply hasn't been there, something which do a child support or some kind of a tie-up there for in a segment where working mothers can go and, mothers can go and work.
Would that be a co-working space where someone like yourself could go? Would you bring your son there and there'd be childcare facilities there, or you'd go there to get away from all of that for a couple of hours?
I would love to do that, Yeah, I'll be happy even if I'm at a co-working space here. I'll be happy even if they have a tie-up with a space, with a childcare facility, So that's something, it is doable. It's just that the potential hasn't been realized of that particular segment.
And also a space where you could a space where you could turn up and people aren't going to look at you like, oh my God, what's she doing bringing that book?
Exactly. Yeah.
You don't want that,
Why
right?
is this baby crying?
Exactly. Okay, that's one.
True.
I mean, that's a great idea. So it's such an untapped market.
Yeah, and the other one which I feel, which has always been there, is the bare minimum co-working space. What I call as, it's similar to shared office, but there are so many people, so many startups, so many people who are sitting at Starbucks. And believe me, being an entrepreneur, whenever I hear someone pitching or, discussing their $1 million idea, my ears are all there. I'm listening. Whatever that person is saying, I don't care, man. You are at public space, you are speaking, I'm going to listen to it. And so do so many other people. They don't belong to that place, They are there because seriously, they don't have an option. That's why. Otherwise, who would want to, work in an environment where everybody can listen to whatever you are saying and the internet connection is a bit wacky at times. You just need a very basic space which provides you the privacy, but at the same time, the basic amenities and doesn't charge you a bomb.
That could be best said. I mean, an existing cafe chain could branch out into something like that, right?
Exactly. So it's like, give them a privacy, give them a separate area, a cornered off area where the people can go and work. And at the same time, they're not being asked to pay 18,000 rupees a month.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned HSBC and co-working spaces as well. And this is something that really fascinates me because I wonder if, up until now, co-working spaces have been sort of like, when they first started popping up, they were an option for people who couldn't afford larger offices and so on. And increasingly, people have started to see the benefits of their own right. Actually, it's better to work in a co-working space than it is to work in an office in many cases, not just the fact that you've got the flexibility, but also the other people around you, which I think is such a key part of co-working spaces, isn't it? To have other entrepreneurs or other workers, everybody's busy, it really makes you want to work. So do you see, that as a trend? I mean, you talk about HSBC. Do you see other corporates now saying, okay, maybe we should do this because economically it might make sense, but also culturally, this might be a good thing for us?
I think perhaps over here, like when the corporates are opening up, the satellite office or temporary office, they're going for co-working spaces because of the flexibility and the economic sense that it makes. So, it's hard to add another floor in HSBC building in Hong Kong. I don't think they can do it. So instead of buying another property, it makes so much more sense to put, your X number of employees at a co-working space. So it's economical, you don't get into the leasing part of it. You don't need to have your people to manage the basic facilities, pay the electricity bill, etc. And at the same time, you have flexibility because today you are 300 people. Tomorrow, if you're 350 or 250, you can adjust your contract based on that. Whereas if you go for a leased office or your own office, you do not have that flexibility. You will go for a 500-seater office and temporarily sit only 300 people there. And in some cases, so when I was in US visiting co-working spaces there, I actually realized that Expedia has a satellite office in Portland in one of the co-working spaces. So 4 or 5 people, because the company doesn't have any presence or doesn't have a lot of employees in a particular city, they don't want to really open an office there. But they still have people who are working remotely. So they have started going to co-working spaces and getting 3-4 desks for their employees, which kind of makes sense. You get an office and the facility there, like the professional working environment, without from company side actually investing into owning or leasing an office space. So I think more than the benefits that co-working spaces bring to entrepreneurs, which is like networking and the professional environment, it is the ease and the flexibility and the economical sense that is driving corporates to go to co-working spaces to have their employees there.
Right. Yeah, it's very interesting. It sounds like a stupid question to ask, but I think bear with me because it's leading somewhere. But when these corporates go into co-working spaces, do they section off their area? Like, this is the Expedia area, then you can't come in here, or do they sort of work openly like everybody else in that co-working space? And there's a reason why I'll ask that, and I'll ask you in a minute. I'll tell you in a minute why.
Okay. So see, it works both ways. So there is one co-working space in Bombay where I was earlier, and a company has come in there. It's not any big brand, but they had some security concerns, so they took the entire floor. So nobody can enter that area now. Everybody who was using that area has been moved to the other floor or other part of the space. Whereas, in some cases where the privacy and what the teamwork is not that much required, it's actually just like few desks in open area. So, it's not like a private office that you cannot enter. So I think it works, like people go for the cornered off area or the separate area where others don't have access when you have the scale for it. But if you have few employees and, it's like the work that they are doing is not that critical, people or corporates have gone for, non-dedicated or non-cornered off areas.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm just sort of curious about how the sort of corporate culture, continues when you have that kind of situation where you're mixing up with lots of other people. But as you said, they have that option to section things off or corner things off as well. Okay, so, co-working spaces have really developed and evolved in the last few years, and I'm sure in India they're developing as fast as anywhere else, and interesting things going on. I've been to some really interesting places. I've been to, like, for example, Ubud, right down in Bali, which is sort of a co-working bamboo co-working space in the middle of
that place.
Have you been there? Have you in the middle of the
rice? I have. Yeah, I have.
Oh, wow. Well, so for me, that's kind of like, wow, this is like amazing. And there'll be a guy there from Google and, some yoga teacher. It's just such a weird mix, weird in a good way, because I think, when you're in a business, you kind of need to get inspiration from different places and get out of your ivory tower. Is that sort of, and they have so much community stuff going on there as well, don't they? They have like an event almost every night, whether it's in Ubud or outside Ubud or whatever. It's just amazing. What Steve's done with that place is just phenomenal, right?
Yeah.
So, I love Ubud. Do you see, like, around the world or in India particularly, any sort of interesting developments of sort of co-working spaces trying things which are new, which are sort of outside of what you expect in an office?
So I've seen more places like Ubud in other parts, like in Cambodia, etc. Where there's like you go to a place, it has such a nice vibe to it. I have to say I have not seen that that type in India as of now. There are few places which are more arts driven. So, they would have plays and, they would organize theater, etc. So more artsy, creative type of things, but nothing that is very particularly, on the lines that you have mentioned, where the vibe is, I would say, different. It's not that, like I have not met any yoga teacher at any of the co-working spaces I have visited in India. And believe me, I have been to more than 125 such spaces around the world. So
there's a lot of yoga teachers in India, right? So.
Yeah, but they see, that might be just another segment that needs to be captured by co-working spaces. Yeah. But over here, it's more like get the business done kind of a thing. Yeah. To be very frank, the leads, the kind of business that we have generated in India, only a very small fraction of it has been for freelancers or, people, just like single person looking for a space. It is usually like a small team or a big team that is looking out. The digital marketers or the freelancers or digital nomads are still working from home in India, I would say.
For sure. Well, it's been really fascinating to have a walk through the co-working space world with you today, honey. I'm sure the listeners have enjoyed learning about it. And also, your ideas for, those co-working spaces, unmet demands, mompreneurs, etc. I think these are great ideas. And it'd be interesting, if people are actually working on those ideas or, they are involved in projects and developing those co-working spaces, they should be in contact with us. They can tweet us at AsiaTechPod or hashtag AsiaTechPodcast. Honey, before you go, and I want to ask you, where do we find out more about you? Because you're in such an interesting area, such an interesting space. I'm sure people want to find out more about your projects and also connect with you as well. So share with us some links for the listeners that they can sort of find out about you.
Right. So see our portal, our website, which is Kowrk.com. Cowork.com is the best place where we are very active through our blogs. Otherwise, on social media channels, our profile on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram is Cowork.com. So Kowrk.com. We are very active. We are, we are doing all our marketing through digital media. So catch us anywhere on our website or on social media channels, and we would love to hear from you. Just tweet us, give us a message, and our team will be in touch with you if you or your listeners have any ideas or any questions about co-working.
Fantastic. That's Honey Kathuria, everybody, founder of Kowrk. Been a real pleasure having you on the show, honey, and I do wish you come back as well at some point in the future, because I know you're busy. You've not just got founding and growing a business, but you also have a young boy to look after. But I know in the future as well, you'll be out traveling at some point. So it'd be really interesting to see where your journeys take you and the kind of things you're involved with as well on this journey with Kowrk. So please come back on the show. Thank you so much for joining us today, honey.
Thank you. Thanks, Ram, for having me. It has been great talking to you.
You've been listening to Asia Tech Podcast. Find out more at www.asiatechpodcast.com.